You know, some wars are fought over freedom and some are fought over pastries. If there was ever a lesson not to mess with your neighbors, this would be it. Way back in 494 AD in Saudi Arabia, the Banu Taghlib and Banu Bakr tribes got into a disagreement over a camel. The camel, owned by a woman named Al-Basus, wandered off to go hang out with some of the other camels. Now, Al-Basus's nephew was the leader of the Banu Bakr tribe, and those other camels were owned by the rival Banu Taghlib tribe. Now, that wouldn't have been that big of a deal, except that the chief of the Banu Taghlibs killed Al-Basus's camel, not realizing that it wasn't one of his own. When her nephew found out, he took an eye for an eye to a whole nother level and killed the chief. That sparked a massive war between the two tribes that lasted for 40 years. Okay, look, I get it, camels are precious, but I'm pretty sure a 4-decade-long war that's still referenced as a warning against holding a grudge wasn't the best way to deal with the problem. I know they got them lovely camel humps, but you just buy another one instead of starting a war and killing people. It's a good choice. The Golden Stool is the royal throne of the Ashanti people and is believed to hold the spirit of the Asante nation. It's so precious that few people ever get to even see it, let alone sit on it. Asante was located along the Golden Coast in what is now Ghana, and back in 1900, while their chief was in exile, they were dealing with the British trying to colonize their land. But on March 25th, the British governor, Sir Frederick Hodgson, demanded that they not only let him sit on the stool, but also give it to him to bring to the Queen. Oh, that was bad move, Freddy! The request was so disrespectful that the chief's mother led an attack against the Brits. The siege lasted 3.5 months until the Brits, with heavy reinforcements, broke through on July 14th. Sadly, in retaliation, local villages were pillaged and land was stolen. Over 2,000 soldiers and countless more civilians were killed, and all because some guy couldn't sit on a stool. It's not like it was a toilet and the guy was just urgent to make caca. It was just a regular stool. It's just lazy and didn't want to stand up. Man, these people. On September 17, 1788, in the midst of the Austro-Turkish War, an Austrian army of 100,000 men set up camp near the town of Karayashibesh. A group of army scouts crossed the nearby river to make sure that the enemy Ottoman army wasn't close by, when they met some gypsies with a whole lot of schnapps. The scouts were pretty boozed up when more infantry soldiers showed up and demanded that they share, but the scouts refused, and no surprise, a fight broke out and a makeshift fort was built around the barrels of schnapps. That's kind of crazy. I've never wanted to drink that badly in my life. But it gets worse, because amongst the chaos, shots were fired, and thinking it was the Ottomans invading, soldiers started yelling, "The Turks, the Turks!" which was made worse when German-speaking officers started yelling, "Halt!" which sounded to some like Allah. It was just a whole big mess, and then the fight woke the rest of the camp, who joined into the battle. By morning, 10,000 soldiers had been killed and wounded by their own men. Yeah, but still got the schnapps though. The San Juan Islands are located between Washington State and Vancouver Island, but ownership of the land was never clearly defined by the US or the British. In the mid-1800s, the British-owned Hudson Bay Company moved onto the island and set up a huge sheep ranch. But then, in 1859, American settlers showed up thinking it was their land. Things were pretty tense, and then on June 15th, American Lyman Cutlar found a pig digging in his garden, so he shot it. Bacon. Problem was, the pig belonged to Charles Griffin, a Brit. When the British police tried to arrest Cutlar, he called for military support. By August 10th, 5 British ships and 2,140 troops were face to face with 461 Americans and 14 cannons. But luckily, both sides gave the order to only fire if fired upon, so they just kind of sat there. It took over 6 weeks for each side to agree to reduce their armies, but the tension lasted 12 years when America officially took control of the islands. See, kids, think twice next time before you go onto an unknown island and start shooting pigs. In 1731, the War of Spanish Succession ended with a treaty that let British traders take 500 tons of goods and as many slaves as they wanted from Spanish colonies. It wasn't much of a peace deal, so Britain and Spain were at war a lot. In 1731, Julio Fandino, the commander of a Spanish patrol boat, boarded the British ship the Rebecca. Fandino accused the captain, Robert Jenkins, of smuggling, and as punishment, he cut off Jenkins' left ear. He was like an early, more civilized Mike Tyson. So in 1738, British Parliament decided to hold a hearing. No pun intended. Lucky for them, Jenkins had kept his detached ear for 7 years and brought it with him to court. They were so outraged by the shriveled little ear that they actually declared war. 407 British ships and 186 Spanish ships were lost, and over 20,000 British were killed, along with 4,000 Spanish killed and 5,000 total wounded. The war lasted 9 years with no territory gains or a winner. All over an ear. Man, I can't listen to this story anymore. See what I did there? Ear joke. From 1838 to 1839, France and Mexico were involved in the Pastry Wars. But don't get too excited, it wasn't nearly as delicious as it sounds. At the time, many countries were trying to take control of Mexico, and people were getting upset with all the damage being done to their property. So, in November of 1838, a French pastry chef, Monsieur Ramontel, issued a complaint with the French King Louis Philippe. He claimed that in 1832, his shop near Mexico City had been looted, and he wanted 60,000 pesos in compensation. So the king gave him his full support and demanded that Mexico pay 600,000 pesos in damages, but Mexico just refused. So France sent a fleet of warships to Veracruz, the main port in the Gulf of Mexico. Not only did they occupy the entire city, but they blocked the navy, leading to Mexico declaring war on France. It only ended on March 9th, 1839, when Britain intervened and got the Mexican president to agree to pay. That would have been way more interesting if someone just stole a whole bunch of croissants and 2 countries went at it. And more tasty. On February 6, 1840, the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi allowed the British to legally occupy New Zealand, which wasn't exactly favored by the local tribes. The British began to take over more control and moved the capital from Waitangi in the Bay of Islands south to Auckland. This was upsetting to the Maori tribe, which had signed a deal to ensure their independence. As the region lost out on huge revenues because of the move, they built up support for a rebellion against the British. And on July 8, 1844, supporters cut down the flagstaff that flew the Union Jack on Maikai Hill in Kororaka. But it did not take long for the British to put up a new pole and flag. So they went and cut it down again. In 6 months, the pole was cut down and put back up 3 times. Having enough, on March 11, 1845, the 600 armed Maori stormed the city and fought the British, who were outnumbered but eventually won. The Battle of New Orleans was the biggest battle of the War of 1812 between the US and the British. British forces had made their way down to Louisiana with hopes of taking New Orleans. On January 8, 1815, they marched on the city, but Major General Andrew Jackson had set up a strong defensive that was 3 lines deep and 4 miles long. The fighting lasted until January 16th, and it was one of the war's bloodiest battles, but amazingly, the Americans won, with only 100 casualties compared to the 2,000 British who were killed. Only one small problem. The battle was completely unnecessary. That's because when the fighting started, the war was already over. Earlier, on December 24th, 1814, a peace treaty between the US and the UK was signed in Ghent, Belgium, effectively ending the war. But see, 200 years ago, news didn't travel like it does now, and it took weeks for the news to reach North America and the troops. Damn technology, you scary! In 1958, Iceland claimed that they had exclusive fishing rights 12 miles off their coast. Sounds fair enough, except the British weren't happy about it because this was 4 miles more than Iceland had before. But instead of dealing with the issue with long, boring policy meetings, things got pretty fishy, like literally. Like a scene from the Three Stooges, the captains from both sides started throwing live cod at each other. At one point, Icelandic patrol boats tried to board the British ships, but they chased them off with axes and hammers. Iceland even tried to blast a British fishing boat out of the water, but was chased away by a gang of British naval ships. By the end of it, Iceland had 6 Navy ships and Coast Guard vessels up against the force of the British Royal Navy. It took all the way up until 1976 for the British, after being internationally mocked and losing tons of money on military expenses, that they decided to quit and let Iceland keep their water. Yeah, the British love their fish, do they? It's not really worth it now, is it? No. The Camel War took place in the Netherlands in 1784 and is considered to be the most humiliating war of all time. At that time, the Netherlands was split into 2 territories, the Northern Netherlands and the Austrian Netherlands, backed by the Roman Empire. Since the late 1500s, the Northern Netherlands had blocked trade ships from using the Scheldt River to access Austria-controlled Belgium. But on October 8, 1784, the Roman Emperor Joseph II decided to send 3 ships, including his prized merchant ship Le Louis, up the river, figuring it was about time that the Dutch just let them use it. No one ever thought that the Dutch would even notice, but oh boy, they were wrong. With tensions running high, a Dutch warship fired a single shot at Le Louis and it hit a kettle of soup. This alone caused the army to surrender. The emperor tried to save face by declaring war on October 30th, but no one took him seriously. I'm pretty sure this is where the phrase "pick your battles" came from. Hey guys, thanks so much for watching this. As always, I would very much appreciate it if you left a like on it if you enjoyed this video, and of course subscribe if you haven't yet. Don't forget I'm going to have a brand new video for you tomorrow at 12 West Coast time, 3 Eastern Standard Time. So make sure you come back to my channel then. Have a great day. I'll see you then.